Ms. Patterson, can you repeat your full name, please?
Erin Trudy Patterson.
And how old are you?
50.
Now, I want to start by asking you some questions about what your life was like in July of 2023.
Okay.
I'm outside the Latrobe Valley Courthouse and we've just finished one of the biggest days in the murder trial of Erin Patterson. It was the day that the accused herself took to the stand. We only found out it was going to happen late in the day and her testimony lasted about an hour, but we're going to spend this episode unpacking it all. I'm Brooke Grebert-Craig and this is The Mushroom Cook. It's the start of week 6 and I'm joined as always by my colleague, court reporter Laura Placella. We're here in our makeshift podcast studio in Morwell.
What a day we've had.
It was huge. I was in the overflow room today, but Laura, you were fortunate enough to snag a seat in courtroom 4.
That's right. Like most days of the trial, the courtroom was packed. I wasn't allocated a reserved media seat today, but I managed to grab a seat on a bench in the courtroom near the jury box. And there are about 7 of us on this bench, so it's safe to say it was a tight squeeze. The prosecution closed its case today, and as soon as that took place, Justice Christopher Beale turned to Erin's defence barrister, Colin Mandy, and he asked, "What course will the accused be taking?" There was a pause, and then Mr. Mandy replied, "Your Honour, the defence will call Erin Patterson."
And what was it like in the courtroom at that time?
It was a very hushed moment, and then right after that, the jury were ushered out of the courtroom to allow Miss Patterson to get from the dock, where she's been seated for 24 days, to the witness box, where she would give evidence today.
And can you describe to our listeners what she looked like and what she was wearing?
So she was in a black paisley shirt, paisley being a pattern, and it had a few spots of colour on it. She had her hair out, draped over her shoulders, and we have seen her at times use glasses, but today she chose not to wear them. It was at this point that the tip staff, who manages the courtroom, walked over to Miss Patterson and walked her through her affirmation. She gave an affirmation to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And after that, the questioning got underway.
So Mr. Mandy asked Erin a range of questions about her life, so we'll walk our listeners through each point. Let's start with her low self-esteem.
Erin revealed to the court that she was planning to have weight loss surgery in a gastric bypass. Here's more of what she was asked. We've used actors to voice their words.
How, in July of 2023, how did you feel about yourself physically?
Not good.
Why?
I'd been fighting a never-ending battle of low self-esteem most of my adult life. And the further inroads I made into being middle-aged, the less I felt good about myself, I suppose. Put on more weight, could handle exercise less.
Was it principally the weight issue?
Yeah. I mean, that was the bulk of it. Yep.
And did you have plans to do anything to address the weight issue?
I did.
And what were those plans?
I was planning to have weight loss surgery. Is it gastric bypass? I was planning to do that.
Mr. Mandy asked Erin about the birth of her and Simon's son. She said his birth was very traumatic.
He went on to ask her why.
For what reason?
It went for a very long time and they tried to get him out with forceps and he wouldn't come out and he started to go into distress and they lost his heartbeat, so they did an emergency caesarean and got him out quickly.
Okay, now as a result of that caesarean, you had to stay in hospital for a few days.
Yeah. It was 16 years ago, so I'm not sure exactly how long, but it was probably roughly a week that I was in. My son was in the neonatal ICU for a while to start with.
And how was it that you ended up leaving hospital?
So my son had got to a point where they were happy to discharge him. He was off oxygen, he was off the feeding tube, and they said he could be discharged to go home with Simon, but they wanted me to stay because they didn't think I had healed quite well enough from the surgery, and they wanted me to stay, and I wanted to go with my son. So I remember having a conversation with Simon about it, and I was really upset, and I said, I don't want to stay here by myself. I want to go home with my son. And Simon said to me, you can just do it. Let's just leave.
Did that involve you discharging yourself against medical advice?
Yep, it did.
Mr. Mandy asked Erin about her Leongatha home that she moved into with her children in June 2022.
And what role did you have in designing that house?
Well, I was involved right from the beginning of the design, I suppose. Simon and I were involved through the whole design process, but I drew a design myself first in Microsoft Paint and gave that to the building designer. And he said, that will never work engineering-wise. Let's move it around a bit, But it modelled quite closely on how I wanted things sorted out.
And what were your plans for that house?
I saw it as the final house, meaning I wanted it to be a house where the children would grow up, where once they moved away for uni or work, they could come back and stay whenever they liked, bring their children, and I'd grow old there. That's what I hoped.
In the year that you had been there, did you like living in the house?
I really liked living in the house, yeah.
Mr. Mandy asked Erin about her financial situation in July 2023. She said she was comfortable financially. Here's more of what she said.
And in July of 2023, what were your financial circumstances?
I was comfortable financially, such that I could afford to go to university and I didn't need to work a full-time job at the same time.
Erin was also asked about when she met her husband, Simon. She went on to explain they both worked at a local council together. This was her exchange with Mr. Mandy.
Can you tell the jury how you met Simon?
We met because we worked at the same place. We both worked at the City of Monash Council offices in Glen Waverley.
And what was your role there?
So I was employed by the RSPCA but as part of that role, I was located at the City of Monash offices as an administration assistant. So the RSPCA had the contract to deliver animal management services to Monash, and as part of that, they would supply 2 rangers and an admin officer, and I was the admin officer.
And what was Simon's role at Monash City Council?
He was a traffic engineer, I believe, at the time.
And how did your relationship commence?
We had mutual friends, is how I remember it coming together. He was friends with people that I had become friends with, so we would come up against each other at lunch or after work drinks, that sort of thing.
And what sort of activities did that group of friends do together?
Initially, in 2003, it was just really lunch at work or after work drinks.
Erin went on to say that her and Simon started dating in July 2005. They were engaged in February 2007 and then married in June that same year. Erin said Simon's cousin, Dave Wilkinson, walked her down the aisle. Mr. Mandy asked Erin where her parents were. She replied, they were in Russia on a train, adding that they were having a holiday.
Erin then said her and Simon travelled around Australia before going to South Africa.
So immediately after our wedding, we had a long weekend in Olinda. That was the honeymoon. But what we really wanted for our honeymoon was to drive around Australia. So Simon gave notice at his job. We gave away everything we had, sold Simon's car to Ian and Heather, bought a Nissan Patrol, and we just hit the open road.
And where did you go?
We first went to Sydney. Simon had some friends there that he wanted us to stay with, so we did that. And then we just slowly meandered our way across Australia, but through the, the far west, Birdsville, Oodnadatta track, the guts of it really.
And where did you end up?
We ended up in Perth around September.
Of
2007.
And did you settle in Perth?
So we did eventually, yeah. But we first went over to Africa for a couple of months.
And where did you go in Africa?
We landed in South Africa. We went to Botswana to visit some of Simon's relatives. We went to Zimbabwe to visit a friend of his. We went camping through Namibia.
And did you get back to Perth at the end of 2007, something like that?
Yeah, about then.
What did you do when you got back to Perth?
When we got back to Perth, Simon was pretty keen to keep travelling and I was pretty keen to stop for a while and put down roots. I was keen to start having babies, I guess, for want of a better way to phrase it, so we did.
Mr. Mandy also asked Erin about her relationship with Simon in July 2023. The jury previously heard the pair separated in 2015. This is what she said.
It was functional. From the start of the year to July, we mainly just related on logistic things like church, the streaming, the kids, but we didn't relate on friend things, banter, like we used to. That changed at the start of the year.
Erin was also asked about parts of her life that weren't so good around that time.
I had felt for some months that my relationship with the wider Patterson family, and particularly Don and Gail, had perhaps had a bit more distance or space put between us. We saw each other less. I mean, partly it's a consequence of I no longer lived in the same town as Don and Gail, but I'd I'd come to have concerns that Simon was not wanting me to be involved too much with the family anymore. Perhaps I wasn't being invited to so many things.
Mr. Mandy asked Erin about her religion when she met Simon.
When you met Simon, what were your views about religion?
I was what you would probably call a fundamentalist atheist. Like, I was really very atheist.
And what was Simon's views?
Oh, he was a Christian, yeah.
And did your attitude towards religion change?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
And what was that?
So through the course of those 2 to 3 months, December 04, January, February 05, we had a lot of conversations about life, religion, politics, and a lot about religion, and I was trying to convert him to being an atheist. But things happened in reverse and I became a Christian.
You said that you first met Don and Gail when you went on a trip to Korumburra.
Yep.
Did you go to church on that trip to Korumburra?
Yeah. It was the first church service I'd ever been to.
And do you remember when that was?
I think the closest I can say is March or April, but I don't think it was Easter. So, yeah.
That's fine. March or April. Do you remember the experience of going to church on that occasion?
Yeah, I do. I remember being really excited about it because I'd never been to a church service before. I'd been to my sister's wedding in a church, but that was it. And I was really looking forward to it.
What church was it?
It was Korumburra Baptist Church.
And what do you remember about that church service?
I remember that there was a banner up on the wall behind where Ian was preaching.
When you say Ian, do you mean Ian Wilkinson?
That's right. He was the pastor, and he was giving a sermon that day, and there was a banner. It could still be there now, but it has on it faith, hope, and love. And Ian gave a sermon talking about that. There's a passage in the Bible that talks about faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. And I remember Ian giving a sermon on that, and then we had communion, which I was welcome to participate in. And
what impact did that church service have on you?
I had what at best can be described as like a spiritual experience. I'd been approaching religion as an intellectual exercise up until that point. Does that make sense? Is it rational? But I had what I would call a religious experience there, and it quite overwhelmed me.
Let's move on to the last topic that Erin was asked about today, the separation between her and Simon.
Erin told the court that ultimately, her and Simon couldn't communicate well when they disagreed about something. Here's more of what she said on that matter.
During those periods of separation, how did you and Simon manage the children?
So obviously the pre-2014 separation, it was just our son. I would say that even though obviously our relationship was struggling because of a separation, it was really important to both of us to cooperate about our son and make it as easy on him as possible, as easy as a separation of his parents can be. Yeah, that was our priority.
And was there any conflict between you as to how to look after your son?
No, there wasn't.
There must have been some tension to cause the separations.
Yeah, of course. Yep, there was.
What was that about?
Primarily what we struggled with over the entire course of our relationship, if we had any problems at all, it was we just couldn't communicate well when we disagreed about something. We could never communicate in a way that made each of us feel heard or understood. So we would just feel hurt and not know how to resolve it.
But that kind of tension didn't extend to how you look after your son.
No, it didn't. Because we just both loved him.
So Erin gave evidence for only 41 minutes today after the morning was spent finishing Detective Leading Senior Constable Stephen Eppingstool's cross-examination.
And Erin will return to the witness box tomorrow for further questions from Mr. Mandy. At some stage, we don't know when, the prosecution will get their turn to cross-examine the accused triple murderer.
Thanks, Laura. To stay updated on this case, go to themushroomcook.com.au.